At 3 a.m, strange noises echoed through the woods, pulling me out of the shallow kind of sleep you only get when camping. At first, it was just a faint rustle, like something brushing against the undergrowth. I thought maybe it was the wind, but then came the snapping of twigs, sharp, deliberate, too heavy for a raccoon. I lay still in my sleeping bag, staring up at the dark fabric of my tent ceiling, ears straining against the silence that followed. The fire outside had died down hours ago, leaving only the faint scent of smoke drifting on the cool air. My breath came out in little clouds, and I could hear the steady drip of dew gathering on the tent fly. Somewhere in the distance, an owl gave a low, haunting call, but that wasn't what had me gripping the edge of my sleeping bag. The noises came again, closer this time, slow steps, a scrape, then what sounded like a low, guttural grunt. My imagination started to race. Bears? We were in their territory after all, and I'd been careful to stash food well away from camp, or maybe a coyote, bold enough to come sniffing around. Worse yet, what if it was something or someone else entirely? Out in the woods at 3 a.m, you realise just how far away you are from safety. The thin walls of a tent don't feel like protection at all. I thought of unzipping the flap, shining my flashlight into the trees, but something deep in me resisted, like lifting that beam would make whatever was out there too real, too close. So I just lay there, heart thumping like a drum, every sound amplified. There was a dragging noise now, slow and steady, almost like something being pulled through the leaves. Then silence again. My mouth was dry as cotton. The minutes stretched, heavy and endless. I told myself it was probably nothing, just my tired brain turning small forest sounds into monsters. Still, I couldn't shake the image of something lurking just outside. Waiting. I don't know how long I lay there, wide-eyed, frozen between dread and curiosity. The woods at night play tricks on a person. Every creak of a tree branch sounds like a footstep. Every gust of wind whispers like a voice. Still, what I was hearing wasn't just imagination. The dragging noise came again, louder now, mixed with a wet, tearing sound. I swear my skin prickled from the inside out. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. My hand shook as I reached for my flashlight. The zipper of the tent seemed impossibly loud as I inched it open, the teeth rasping like some warning I should heed. I hesitated, the cool air slipping in, and the noises stopped again, cut off, as though whatever was out there had heard me move. The silence that followed was worse than the sounds. My breath seemed deafening, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I flicked on the light, its narrow beam cutting through the thin fabric of the tent. For a moment, it gave me courage. I unzipped the rest of the flap quickly and poked my head out. The forest greeted me with a stillness that felt unnatural. The fire pit was nothing but a faint red glow of coals. My gear sat undisturbed. Beyond, the trees stood dark and motionless. I swept the beam in a wide arc, searching the undergrowth. Nothing. No eyes flashing back at me, no movement in the shadows, just quiet woods and my own shallow breathing. And then there it was again. Not far off this time. A heavy thud, followed by the sound of something shifting in the leaves. The flashlight beam quivered as my hand shook, trying to pin down the source, but the sound seemed to slip from tree to tree, never landing in one place. My imagination conjured hulking shapes just beyond the circle of light, watching, waiting. I thought about waking my buddy in the tent next to mine, but something stopped me. Part of me didn't want to look scared, didn't want to admit that the forest was getting under my skin. Another part wondered if maybe he'd just laugh it off. And I wasn't ready to share the weight of what I was feeling. So I sat there, on the edge of my tent, light trembling in my hand, caught between the urge to retreat back inside and the need to see what haunted the night around me. The forest was holding its breath. That's how it felt, sitting there with my flashlight beam wavering across the trees. Every cricket had gone quiet. Even the owl, which had called earlier, seemed to have vanished. The dragging sound came again, this time longer, accompanied by a low, irregular thump, like something heavy hitting the earth. My mind spun through every possibility. A wounded animal, a predator circling, or worse, something I couldn't even name. I forced myself to stand, though my knees wobbled like saplings in a storm. The cold dew soaked through my socks as I stepped out onto the grass. The tent behind me looked suddenly fragile, like a child's toy dropped in the middle of an endless wilderness. I swept the light in slow arcs, narrowing my eyes to see beyond the glare. There, just for a second, I caught movement, a shadow darting low along the forest floor, silent as a whisper. The beam didn't hold it though, and it melted back into the trees before I could be sure of what I saw. My pulse surged. I felt a sharp itch between my shoulder blades, the kind that comes when you know you're being watched, I whispered to myself. Half a prayer, half a warning. Stay calm, it's nothing, just the woods. But the dragging noise started again, closer, punctuated by short rustles that could only be footsteps. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to bolt back into the tent and zip it up tight like a child hiding under blankets. A twig cracked to my left. My head snapped toward it, the beam catching a glint of something pale. Was it eyeshine or just bark? Before I could decide, another sound came from behind me. A soft, wet slap against the ground, deliberate and steady. I spun in place, the flashlight beam carving crazy shapes across the trees. My chest felt tight, breaths coming shallow. The noises seemed to circle me, as if whatever was out there knew exactly how to keep itself hidden. The woods stretched endlessly in every direction, each tree a possible hiding place. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sounds stopped. Silence fell heavy, pressing against my ears. The forest stood still, waiting, and I stood with it, trembling, knowing that the next sound could bring the truth rushing out of the shadows. The silence was unbearable. My arm ached from holding the flashlight so tightly, but I didn't dare lower it. The beam sliced through trunks and branches, each shadow a trickster ready to spring to life. My breath puffed in clouds, the night air colder now, or maybe it was just the fear sinking into my bones. Then, from the darkness ahead, came a sharp metallic clink. My heart nearly stopped. Metal doesn't belong in the woods, not at this hour. I froze, straining to hear, and there it was again. Clink, drag, clink. The sound of something being pulled along the ground, catching on stones. My mind filled with wild thoughts. Could someone be out here? A hunter, a hermit, or worse, someone who didn't want company? The thought of a figure dragging a chain or some tool through the brush sent a chill straight through me. I forced my legs to move, one step at a time, crunching softly on the damp leaves. As I followed the sound, the flashlight beam quivered, bouncing from tree to tree. My ears rang with the pounding of my own blood. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to crawl inside the tent and pretend I had heard nothing. But another part of me, a stubborn streak I've always had, pushed me forward. The sound grew louder. I could hear it clearly now. The dragging was steady, the metallic clink sharp and harsh. I angled the light toward the ground ahead and caught a flash of movement, something pale just at the edge of vision. I stumbled forward, my boot catching on a root, and the beam jerked wildly before settling again. And there it was, just a dozen yards away, half hidden by brush, a shape, low to the ground, hunched, shifting with slow, deliberate movements. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment I thought it was an animal caught in something, a trap maybe. But then the shape twisted, and the sound of scraping metal filled the air once more. The woods pressed in tighter, every muscle in my body coiled, waiting for the thing in the shadows to turn toward me. I steadied the flashlight, forcing my shaking hand to hold the beam steady. The pale shape shifted again, and I finally caught sight of it clearly. My fear cracked into something else. Confusion, then sudden relief, so sharp it left me weak. It wasn't some prowler, nor a bear, nor anything that had any business terrifying me half the night. What crouched in the brush was my own cooking pot, dragged and battered about by a determined culprit, a porcupine. The little creature was nosing at it, claws scraping, the occasional clink ringing out as the pot rolled against a stone. Every drag, every clatter, it had all been the work of this stubborn midnight scavenger. I let out a shaky laugh, though it came out more like a sigh. The porcupine froze in the light, its small dark eyes glinting back at me, quills raised just enough to say, "Back off, this is mine now." For a moment we stared at each other, silent witnesses to the absurdity of the night. Then, with a sudden grunt, it turned and waddled off into the undergrowth, pot abandoned. The woods seemed to breathe again. Crickets resumed their chorus, the owl called once more in the distance, and the night returned to its natural rhythm. My fear ebbed away, leaving only a nervous chuckle and the thud of my heart still slowing down. I retrieved the pot, dented, but otherwise fine, and carried it back to camp like a prize. Crawling back into my tent, I lay there for a long time, wide awake, but no longer afraid. The ridiculousness of it struck me harder than the fear had, how my imagination had turned a bumbling porcupine into a shadowy menace. Out in the wilderness, the line between fear and awe is thinner than we realise. Every sound feels bigger, every shadow deeper, and our minds fill in the blanks with whatever haunts us most. I drifted off eventually, warmed by the thought that sometimes the scariest nights turn out to be the ones you laugh hardest about later. Fear, after all, is just another part of the adventure, the thing that makes the quiet moments by the fire shine even brighter.